So we're talking about the karbanos of Yom Kippurim, and let's just repeat that we had two cases of a nisrafim, which are very unique and have no parallel during the course of the year. One is the paro shel kohen gadol, and that's included on the parim nisrafim. And then we have the sa'ir la'am, which is the sa'ir pnimi, as opposed to the sa'ir that gets sent to the azazel, and that's called se'irim hanisrafim. And what's unique about these karbanos is that they have what's called hazah. They require a hazah of the dam in the Kodesh Kodshim, in the Heichal. It's also called a chatas pnimis. In the case of paro shel kohen gadol, it's called a chatas hapnimis because the hazah of the dam is in the Kodesh Kodshim. And in the case of sa'ir echad lashem, there too it's called a chatas pnimis. It's the irim and israfim called chatas pnimis because there's hazas domo b'kodesh hakadoshim. And as we go along, we're going to try to add and beef up this unique circle of karbanos that are only Yom Kippur karbanos. They have no parallel during the course of the year. Okay. Now, as a general rule, whatever hakrava requirements there are during the rest of the year apply on Yom Kippur as well. However, the first exception that we had was paro shel kohen gadol. The second exception was sa'ir ha'am lashem, sa'ir echad lashem. These are unique, and there's no parallel in any other karbanos during the course of the year because of the hazas damim in the Kodesh Kodshim. No such thing during the year. Another member of this select group that has no parallel in terms of the avoda in the rest of the year is haktores lifnai v'lifnim. The ketores of Yom Kippur is unique, and it requires Kodesh Kodshim. We could add to this the Sa'ir Lazazel. We have no parallel to the Sa'ir Lazazel during the entire course of the year. But as far as Avodas HaKarbanos, these are the three exceptions, unique avodos that have no parallel, no mirror image the rest of the year. Paro shel kohen gadol, which is a par lechatos with hazah of dam in the Kodesh Kodshim. The sa'ir echad lashem, which is the sa'ir ha'am, and also requires hazas damim in the Kodesh Kodshim. The haktores, which we'll talk about at great length, is unique on Yom Kippurim, and it's lifnai v'lifnim. And then, as we said before, forgetting avoda, but when we have avodas chutz, which means sa'ir lazazel that sends chutz lamach. Now, amongst this unique category that has three members to it, that's the paro shel kohen gadol and sa'ir la'am and the ketores, category of special avodos, there are many features of these karbanos that are very unique. And one of them is called Bigdei Lavan. And that means the following, that whereas the whole year round, the Kohen Gadol wears Bigdei Zav, and that means 8 begadim. We'll go through them in just a minute. And on Yom Kippur, for most of the avodos, he also wears Bigdei Zav because these avodos are common to both Yom Kippur and the rest of the year. But with regard to those select avodos that are unique and only apply one day out of the year, Yom Kippur. Here he wears Big Day Lavan. He takes off his Big Day Zav and changes into Big Day Lavan. So what are Big Day Zahav, the 8 begadim, and what are Big Day Lavan? Big Day Lavan are 4 begadim, and they're all made of pishtan, of linen, and that's why they're called Big Day Lavan. They include the ketones, which is the most important of the 4, the mithnasayim, the mitznefes, and the avneit. These 4 are called Big Day Lavan, and they are made of linen. And Big Day Zav add 4 extra begadim, which the Kohen Gadol wore the entire year for his avodos, and they all have gold. And they are Choshen, Ephod, Me'il, and Tzitz. And the Pasuk tells us in Achrimos, with regard to the avodah of the Kohen Gadol, the unique avodah of Yom Kippurim, Ksones bad Kodesh Yilmash, Umichnase bad Yu al Besoro, Ubavneit bad Yachkor, Ubimitznefes bad Yitznov. So the Gemara says that the word bad indicates Big Day Lavan to the exclusion of Big Day Zav. Now let's try to understand, I mean, this may sound philosophical, but it's really halachic. Why does the Torah exclude Big Day Zav on Yom Kippurim, the holiest of holy days, where the Kohen Gadol is exclusive? He's the only Kohen that does the avodah. And the answer is Ein Kategar Nasa Sanegar. That means Eino Roish Ye Kohen Gadol Mechaper Bifnim. Again, Bifnim means in the Kodesh Kodshim. Bivgadim Sheyesh Behem Zahav Li'acher Shechatu Yisrael B'Zahav Ha'egel. We don't show up. In this case, we means the Kohen Gadol in the Kodesh Kodshim with something material that he wears on his begadim that reminds us of the Chet HaEgel, which was Egel HaZahav. So Zahav is excluded in the Kodesh Kodshim. And this is a sugi at the end of Rosh Hashanah. Again, the Gemara has many, many questions and objections because there are things made of Zahav that are in the Pnim. But in any event, it's Begadim. It's only a separate thing in Begadim of Ein Kategar Nasa Saneg. So that is a little bit of background, so to speak, to understand and help us remember that when the Kohen Gadol goes Lifnai V'Lifnim into the Kodesh Kadosh, which he does for the Azas Dam of the Paro Shel Kohen and the Sa'ir La'am, and for the Avodas HaKtores, he's going to be wearing Big Day Lavan, 4 begadim that have no gold on them. And that's the Ksones, the Mithnasayim, the Mitznefes, and the Avnei. Now, here's a question which is addressed by Tosfos later on in Masechta Yom. These 4 begadim, Big Day Lavan, are they the same begadim that the Kohen Gadol wears the whole year round, or do we have to manufacture special begadim, Big Day Lavan, because he's going Lifnai V'Lifnim for those avodos that require Big Day Lavan? One thing is for sure. They are shavin b'maskuntam, which means that they're exactly identical to the Big Day Lavan that he wears the whole year round. With the naked eye, you would certainly not be able to know the difference between the two. All the materials are the same. However, according to Tosfos at least, they have to be manufactured specially for the avodah of Yom Kippurim. Eino yochel lilbosh, Tosfos says, osam begadim shel lovesh kol hashana, el lovesh begadim yuchadim that were created for Yom Kippurim. In other words, Tosfos is requiring a special kiddush, a sanctification on a higher level of the Big Day Lavan, even though they're identical to the Big Day Lavan, that the Kohen wore as 4 of the 8 begodim that he wore the whole year round. However, not every one of the Rishonim accepted this opinion of Tosfos, and Yesh Rishonim Shenoktu Shebigdei Lovin Shal Yom HaKippur Tzachiyus Mishubachim Bigdei Lovin Shal Kol Hashana. In other words, we spiffy them up, but you don't have to create and manufacture a whole new set of begodim. Anyway, Tosfos Shita is we need a new set of begodim, even though they're Bigdei Lovin, which are identical to the Bigdei Lovin that he wears the whole year round. Now we get to the avnate of the Kohen Gadol, the gartel, as we call it, the belt of the Kohen Gadol. He says the following: that again, the avnate, keep in mind, is one of the 4 Bigdei Lovin, and he's going to go and do the avodah lifnai v'lifnim. But it's different than the avnate that he wore and he wears the whole year round. How so? Avneto shel Kohen Gadol shel kol yimot hashana yosim mi pishtan rakum mi semer, or bit semer, which means that the whole year round the avnate was shatnes. It was made with both linen and wool. Ve'ilu ha'avnate shel Yom HaKippurim haya asui mi pishtan levado. There was no admixture of wool. It was pure linen. There was no shatnez worn by the Kohen Gadol in the avnate when he went lifnai v'lifnim. And on this we have an entire sugya at the beginning of Masechta Yoma. But this, what we're doing now, is a very good introduction to these concepts. Before you know it, we'll get to Yoma. I think in about 6 weeks. I don't know exactly when. And these concepts that we're learning now will really help project us into the Masechta. That there's a whole sugya about the avnate of the Kohen Gadol. Was it shatnez? And the final conclusion is that it was shatnez the whole year round, but on Yom Kippur, it was pure linen without any admixture of wool. Now, during the course of the avodah of Yom HaKippurim, the Kohen Gadol would put on his Bigdei Lovin during the following moments, the following occasions. One is Boker, in the morning. Kodem L'tchilas Avodas Hayom. We have to understand exactly why the Kohen Gadol was required to wear Bigdei Lovin when he began the day. V'shenis Bein Arbayim, and that's because of the Avodas HaKtoros. Now, Bein Arbayim means Hotzas Kaf Umachta Shel Ktoros. Again, we haven't yet discussed the very complicated avoda of Ktoros, but there's something at the end of the process of Ktoros which is called Hotzas Kaf Umachta. And that was, of course, done in the Kodshim, and the Kohen Gadol had to wear Bigdei Lovin. Now, on these 2 occasions that the Kohen Gadol is putting on his Bigdei Lovin, one at the beginning of the day and one towards the end of the day, Ben Arbayim, for the Hotzas Kaf Umachta, is he wearing the same exact 4 begodim on both occasions, on the same day? You know, you and I know people who change their clothes constantly, but not on the same day. And the answer is that Af begodim elu shel avodas hayom v'shel hotzas kaf umachta shovim biofen asiyasam. In other words, if you look at them, they are in the material, they are identical for both the Tchilas Hayom and for the Hotzas Kaf Umachta at the end of the day. Which means that there's a different kedusha Shebegadim shal avodas hayom hayu mishubachim umaulim yoser mibegadim shal tzas kafu machta. In other words, kafu machta is the siyum, the completion of moleches haktoris, but it's not part of the avodos that are mechaper. And Yom Kippurim Kishmok Denu, it's a day of kapara. So the avodos that the Kohen Gadol does in the korbanos are part of the essential mechaper, and therefore they have to be, the begadim that he wears for that has to be on a higher level, which is called in the Lashon HaGemara mishubachim umaulim, and they are, as we said before, spiffy. They are beautiful begadim, as opposed to the Otzas Kafu Machta, which is not part of the essential Mechaprim procedure. Lefish Avodas Hayom, Hi Avoda Ha-Mechaperes. V'chashuvi Yosem Avodas Otzas Kafu Machta, Shenoada Yidei Lefanos Es Kodesh Kodshim. The reason why he gets rid of the ashes that are left, and he picks them up in these kind of shovels, kafu machta, is because we don't want to leave the Kodesh Kodshim. He's not going to be there for another year. We don't want to leave it in a state of, the ashes floating around. So he's got to get rid of that. But that's not a machaper. That's not an essential avoda. Now, what are the different milos between the begadim, the big day lovin that he wore at the beginning of the day for the sake of the avoda, and the big day lovin that he wore for the sake of hotzas kafu machta? That's a sugya in the Gemara in Yoma and Daf Lamed Daled Amid Beis. Okay, now we're going to have a discussion about what we do with these begadim at the end of Yom Kippur, the halach of Geniza. But before that, because maybe that will leave for tomorrow, I want to end with footnote number Mem Vav, for those who have the Mesifta, the Hakdama to Masechta Yoma. And he quotes a machlokes between Rashi and the Rambam. Shitas Rashi shedin zeh, that this halacha, that there has to be a difference in the quality of the big day lovan that he starts with at the beginning of the day, and those big day lovan that he ends the day with. Amur bechol arbas big day kohen gadol. Now, as I indicated before, the main beged of big day lovan is the kones, right? The tunic, I think it's called in English. That's what he wears on his body. And the Rambam Shita is that if we have to have different levels for the two begadim and big day lovan from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, that's only as far as the kones is concerned. The Eino din b'shar begadim el etzarach sheyach kones chashuv. It's got to have a chashivus yikarim begadim shel bein arbayim. So he's going to go down a level from the begadim big day lovan that he started the day with, down to the begadim at the end of the day of hotzas kafu machta, but only vis-a-vis the kones. That's the shita of the Rambam. The Rashi shita is that din zeh omer b'chol arbas big day kohen gadol, that all four begadim of big day lovan, that means ksones, mithnasayim, ephod, mitznefes, and avnei, all of them have to be on a higher level, mishubachim yoser, in the morning, and we go down a madriga when we get to the end of the day. In higu chacham shiu begadim shel shachar mishubachim shel bein arbayim. The Rambam says that even though we don't need mishubachim of the first vis-a-vis the second, with regard to michnasayim and mitznefes and avne, but nevertheless the minhag was, the Rambam says, that they would guarantee that the begadim shel shachar, all four begadim, would be mishubachim mishel ben arba'in. So that which Rashi says is mi'ikar adin, meaning this halacha mishubachim in the morning requires mishubachim in all four begadim. The Rambam has it as a minimum. Mi'ikar adin, you just have to upgrade the michnasayim in the morning, or maybe we'll say downgrade the michnasayim for the evening. But the minhag was, and apparently the Chacham accepted this minhag, that all four begadim should be mishubachim in the morning. There's a very revolutionary sheet, and with this will end, of the Mishnah Melech. He interprets the Rambam as saying that there are two kutonos that the Kohen wore. I mean, that's not the Mishnah Melech, that we know ourselves. But he says, Od Haya Kutona Shliches, there was a third kutonis that he wore, a third, meaning different than the first two, that he wore for certain avodos. Okay, this is where we're going to stop, and tomorrow we'll talk about Big Day Kohen at the end of Yom Kippur. What did they do with the begun?